guess what I'm getting to is, did you hear the outrage of the panel that we had earlier this morning?
Mr. Chairman, I hear it every day.
Okay. Well, I have to believe that that outrage was sincere and somewhat based on reason. There was a statement there by these people that they felt there were representations made by the individuals they dealt with, whether they were dealers, whether they were banks, whoever they were, that the United States government in some way was watching out for their best interest and, in fact, in some instances under the law, insuring them. And it wasn't until after the fact they found out that they were totally misinformed or they misunderstood or that they just weren't supported. And prospectively, I guess they're asking us to look at this, and that's one of the things we clearly can do.
Certainly.
What we can do to prevent or to recompensate them for some of their losses is very questionable. I don't know how far we're going to get there, but there are probably some things we can do, and we'll be directed toward that end. But I think what I'm particularly disturbed about this whole last 15, 18-month disaster that we've been in is an attitude at the governmental level or quasi-governmental level that it's not our problem. We don't have to take preventative steps, investigative steps. And I think you do. It is our problem. It's the committee's problem. It's the Congress's problem. It's the president's problem. You know, we just, as a matter of course, cannot accept in this country that some people feel that their government left them down, wrongly so, and that they weren't acting in its best pattern. And in many of these instances, and I heard their testimony, there's very little that they could have done. I mean, you know, I raised the question caveat emptor, and I'm a great believer in that. But by God, in some of these instances, I don't care how they, what actions they took. Somebody mentioned to me, and I won't identify Mr. Ackerman by name, that during the stock market crash, Mr. Madoff was getting calls from officials of the United States government and asked what his recommendation, should they close the market? What should happen? Well, and that's understood. Wasn't he president of NASDAQ at one time? He was a pretty substantial person in this country. But after we see what happened, what are we doing to prevent this in the future? Are we checking out some of the things that, quote, some of these very substantial people are involved in? Are they trading on that? Are they enticing relatively innocent people to trust them and give them their life savings and their pension funds and everything else? What have we done? For instance, what has your corporation done to go back and test across the country all these workers' pension funds and ask them how are they getting advice as to where to invest, what advice is being made, who are they using? Are we finding some method to check these people out? Or are we just willy-nilly, don't give a damn, and it's up to them, and if they get cleaned, they get cleaned? It seems to me that once you see something like this happening, being either in the government or quasi in the government, we have more of a responsibility to do something. You know, we can't cure it all. We can't save everybody. We can't prevent all injury. But obvious injury, obvious things that are at fault or failures that exist, we have an obligation. And that's when I first started this long discourse on my part, and I see my time is up. I feel offended that more federal agencies or quasi-federal agencies such as your own aren't coming forward to tell us what they need. What authorities do you need? What could we do better? How can we change the law? How can we better educate people? You know, it's not enough to just say, gee, tough luck. $50, $60 billion, 13, 15,000 people got clipped by a very professional artist. We've got to learn from that. We've got to take actions to find out there aren't other Madoffs out there. There aren't other Stanford financials out there. And I'm not sure I'm getting the impression that the two agencies are doing that. And I'm not putting all my weight on you, Mr. Harback. I think I've taken some action in the legislation that's on the floor today against the SEC on that very substance. You all have to, you know, and let me point out, Mr. Solicitor, that what I found so damn offensive in this whole thing, that you're so channeled over there that you have no chain of command. I cannot believe that you can do 3, 4 investigations over more than a decade and come up with some really, I think, important questions of the credibility and viability of a person, although very highly thought of on the street, but it never goes up beyond 1 or 2 levels in an organization that's 10 levels. You have no chain of command. What the hell would we do to a 4-star general that put a lieutenant in the field that killed 150 innocents? If he didn't know about it within 24 hours and take action, he'd be gone, or should be gone. Now, sometimes I think about it, we haven't had him disciplined in any way. But we've got to have a chain of command, whether it's in the military or whether it's in civilian life. If it's the government, we've got to find out what's happening at the lowest level. If it's really violative of good sense and acceptable practices, we've got to take action. We've got to make sure that that chain of command has good communications up and down. And I think the SEC, I saw the commissioner the other night, or the chairman, and you know, Mary and I are very good friends, so we had a heart-to-heart discussion on that very subject. We wrote into this law something I want you all to take back to the SEC. We want you to do a study, not inside, but outside, of the most thorough type, to study where the dysfunctional nature of the SEC exists. And if there's anybody over there that doesn't think the organization is dysfunctional, then read the Inspector General's report on Madoff. I mean, it's the most classic bit of evidence I've ever seen that shows dysfunctional operation. And it's just not Madoff, it's in other areas of the organization. We've got to clean that up. And I don't believe you can do it from the inside. I'm not going to speak for the chairman, but my impression is she tends to agree too, that you've really got to go out and do an honest thing here. And as I said to her last night, I don't want to even stop at the SEC. All related agencies around the SEC should be so studied and investigated and disclosed, and the reports sent to Congress for remedial action. But I think that should be the beginning point for what I'm sensing from the American people. They are not going to take it anymore that we in government just said, well, we can't do anything about it. It happened. We're sorry. Well, that's nice. We didn't lose. These people lost. That doesn't make them feel too damn. It wouldn't make me feel good if I lost a 5 million, 10 million, or 50 million. It doesn't matter. I lost it, and I shouldn't have. If everybody had been performing their function in the ideal way, it wouldn't have happened. But they obviously weren't, and the number of security people that were sleeping on the switch were incredible in this instance. So I want you to take that message back. I've eaten up more than my 5 minutes, and I'll be very lenient. Since we have no Republicans, look how lenient I can be to my friend from New York. Gary?
Notice, Mr. Chairman, I didn't tell you your time was up.